everything we have was given to us. Only God owns everything and no one gave him because he created it. So he's the Lord as far as office is concerned. So you can study God from his essence or from his offices. And this is why I said to understand Jesus in his holistic being, we must study Jesus from the context of his office. And Jesus functions in 4 unique offices. Number 1, he is God the Son. Number 2, he is Son of God. God the Son and Son of God are 2 different things. It's important to know this because the one you know will activate a dimension in you. So studying Jesus is not just about knowing Jesus. It's also about becoming. Because anything you see in him deposits something on your inside. You become to the degree that you know him. So he is God the Son. He is Son of God. He is Son of Man. And he is Christ. If you know him from these 4 offices to a large extent, you would have touched different dimensions of Jesus Christ. And so in the morning, we were able to touch him as God the Son. And I said, scriptures affirms that Jesus is indeed God. Many religions are still studying who he is. And the best result they have is that he's a prophet. They have failed. And I'm surprised that they are still there. It shows you how slow we operate when we use our brain to resolve spiritual things. Because this question has already been answered over 2,000 years ago. Matthew 16 from verse 16 to 18. Who do men say I, the Son of Man, I am? Some say you are Jeremiah. Some say you are Isaiah. Some say you are John the Baptist returned from the dead. None of them knew him. Until today, the religions of the world are still giving that answer. That Jesus is the greatest prophet. They think when they say so, they are honoring him. They don't know that that revelation does not capture who he is. And himself has marked that revelation to be wrong. Because when the apostles brought that profile, he cast it aside and said, who do you say I am? So we must know him in his offices to be able to capture his dimensions. And the first place you will know him from is as God the Son. Now, for you to understand and appreciate this, you need to understand how God operates. Because God has a state he assumes in his being, and he has a state he assumes in his manifestation. That's the complexity with God. I was sharing with them in the morning, and I said, there's nothing we can use to explain this in its full scope. But there are things in nature that can give us little insight. Because Romans 1 verse 20 said, the invincible things of God, even his eternal essence and Godhead, is revealed in nature. So if we look at nature, we can understand a few things about the character of God. And so I use water, for instance. I said, essentially speaking, water is a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen in the ratio of 2:1. But I said, in manifestation, water manifests as ice block, it manifests as liquid, and it manifests as steam. Now, ice block is not liquid. Liquid is not steam. But both ice block, liquid, and steam is H2O. So essentially speaking, water is one reality. But manifestly, it takes 3 forms. So you cannot say there are 3 water. There's one water. It's called H2O. But in manifestation, there is what? Solid, there is liquid, and there is gas. That's the way God operates. Essentially, God is one being. But in manifestation, you have Father, Son, and Spirit. So Father is God, Son is God, Spirit is God. But Father is not Son, Son is not Spirit, but 3 of them is one God. So Jesus is the second person of the Godhead. This is why the Bible identifies and recognizes him as God. In the beginning was the Word. John 1 verse 1. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So he revealed Jesus as God in his full scope. And I said, this revelation must be settled in your heart, because if it is not, it will have implications. So the reason we strive to reveal Jesus as God is because of what it does to us if we know him as God. Because most of us are very religious people, but we have not known Jesus as God. This is not something you quote from scripture. If you enter that revelation, it will show in your life that you have come to articulate this personality to be God and the living God in his full powers. What is the implication of knowing him as God? I said, number one, you'll be able to worship him. Because worship is born out of revelation. I told them in the morning, worship is not singing. We can worship through singing, but worship is deeper than singing. When the Bible said there are a particular kind of people God is looking for, and is looking for those that we worship him, it's not in songs, it's in spirit and in truth. So worship is a technology that is carried out in spirit and in truth. So don't make the mistake of thinking worship is singing. We can worship through singing, but worship is deeper than singing. What is worship? Worship is an adoration that flows out of a man's spirit, recognizing God's majesty. And that adoration compels that man to submit completely to the government of God. This is why the first time the word worship was used, nobody sang. Genesis 22 verse 5. Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac. He said, take thy son Isaac, whom thou lovest, to one of the mountains of Moriah. There sacrifice him before the Lord. No argument, no delay. Immediately he carried the boy and went to the mountain. Told the servant, wait here, I'm going yonder with the lad to worship. What are you going to do? Which song are you singing? Where's the keyboard? Where's the tambourine? You don't need tambourine to worship. I'm going to obey the one that I love. I'm not doing it out of compulsion. I'm doing it out of adoration and regard for his majesty. Because I know that whatever he says is right. And even if I don't like it, I will have to do it. And in case it is wrong, he has the power to change it. That's why I said God can raise back Isaac in the figure. So it took revelation for that to happen. See, most of what we call worship today is business. I'm telling you. And that's why most of our worshipers are hirelings. They don't have the revelations of God. So even when they come to sing, they ride on gift. You can't find the adoration that God deserves. You go to the throne room and find the 24 elders. You will understand what adoration is. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord. And they did that forever and ever. You can't do that until you know him. Because every time they fell on their faces, when they rose up, they saw another dimension. Every time they fell, when they rose up, they saw another dimension. This is why, although they had thrones, they never sat on it. Although they had crowns, they never wore it. When they saw the glory of God, they knew it to be an error to be wearing crowns in his presence. So they submitted their own crown. I'm talking revelation that best worship. So we come to church, we can't worship God. Tell people, lift your hands and talk to God. They don't know what to say. So we hide under sweet songs and we are dancing and gyrating, but there's nothing flowing to God because there's no revelation. We have not known him as God. I said, when you know him as God, the second thing that will happen is that fear and trembling will come on you. This generation, where people respect their bosses more than God, is this the generation that knows Jesus? No, we don't. Some of us here, for 2 years, we have never gone late to the office. 2 years. Office is 6 a.m. We are there 5:30. And we never even think of leaving before closing hours. Nobody is talking, we know. But you see, God's servant had to stand here to beg us that service is not yet over, don't go. How many do that in the office? Because you know that it's not tolerated. You will be queried. And if you are queried twice, you are at the risk of being sacked. And we respect our jobs, respect the policies, respect our bosses much more. How many of us talk to our bosses the way we talk to God? We show up, we are praying, no reverence, no regard, lackadaisically. And then we say we are talking to God. That's why anything that needs God to be solved, we know we don't have it. Because if that person you are talking to is God, when you are in trouble, it will show. This is why when we are in trouble, we are looking for help everywhere, not God. Because we know we don't know him. Is it a God that can deliver you from death that you cross your leg talking to? Is it a God that can deliver you from death that you are talking to and making phone call? How many of us can talk to our bosses the way we talk to God? You know that if your boss summons you, you come there. There's a comportment. There's a way you stand. There's a reverence, disposition you show. And every word you answer with courtesy and caution. Because without being told, you know that when you stand before him, there's a disposition that's allowed. But because we don't know Jesus, we talk to him anyhow we want. So there's no reverence. And I'm not giving you laws on how to speak to God. I am saying, if you respect God, it will show. And you too can tell the difference between your disposition towards God and disposition towards things on earth that you hallow. The reason there's no fear for God is because the revelation of God is lacking. And I said number 3, when we know Jesus as God the Son, it will show in the power that we will wield. Because if you know, now I'm going to talk to you a little about names. When you call the name of a spirit, you are not introducing that spirit. The Bible never bothered to introduce God. Genesis 1 verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Because every one of us, the Bible said that light is the true light that lighted every man that cometh into the world. Even the atheist know there's God. He is angry with God or is lying to himself. Nobody on earth can claim he doesn't know there's God. So when we call God, it's not to introduce him. It's to invoke a dimension in him. So when you know that Jesus is God, if you call his name, you know that God has entered this.